Brandon. I'm a licensed mental health counselor associate. Just so that you know a little bit about me and you know that I know what I'm talking about. A little bit about me. I have a degree in biblical studies. That's my undergraduate degree. I have my master's in clinical counseling from Western Seminary. I formerly worked as a missionary in the Philippines, and then I went into mental health and became a counselor. Also, I'm talking about depression, and I've experienced depression in my own life, so I know what I'm talking about there too. I've experienced suicidal ideation. I've been to some dark places in my soul, and so I have personal experience with this topic that I'm talking about. That's part of what led me into being a counselor, is that I realized that the sadness inside of me connects with the sadness inside of other people, and God can use that to bring healing and deliverance. And one of the tools that I have is a degree in clinical counseling, so that I know what I'm doing when I make people cry and mess them up. So that's fun. And so now when people are like, hey, will you come talk to a bunch of middle school and high schoolers about depression? I'm like, yeah, this is so exciting. This is be awesome. And I know that I'm different. I know that, but that's okay. I wanted to talk a little bit about what depression is, what depression isn't, how depression works, and give you an example of depression from the Bible that we can kind of work with and play with. I like stories. I feel like I understand stuff better when I have a story to go along with it, so that's what we're going to do. So getting into what depression is and isn't. Depression, I'm going to start with what it is not. And I want you to hear me. Depression is not a sin. It is not a moral failure. It's nothing of the sort. No feelings that you could ever feel could ever possibly be a sin. You can't feel any kind of fear, sadness, pain, loneliness, anything that is a sin. Feelings are information. They're tools. What you do with that information, what you do with those tools, that's what matters. But you cannot, depression is not, it cannot be a sin. Depression is not sadness. Sadness can lead to depression, absolutely. Sadness can be a big part of depression. But depression is not sadness. Those aren't the same words. Depression is not a choice. It's not some mistake that you've made. It's more than that. There's circumstances. There's chemistry that goes into it. And I say there's chemistry, and my next thing is to say depression isn't brain chemistry. Not that alone. That can be a part of it, absolutely. There can be something in your head that's messed up. Sometimes medication helps people overcome depression. That's one of the tools that God has given us to bring freedom into people's lives. But depression is not necessarily just about brain chemistry. Depression is more like running out of what you need, needs depletion. Whether those are emotional needs, mental needs, physical needs, when you've given it your all, or you're alone, you've just run out of you've run out of joy, you've run out of friendships, you've run out of energy, and you stay in that space. That's more like what depression is. Depression is a combination of circumstances and chemistry, absolutely. It's what's going on outside of you and around you and inside of you. It's all those things. Depression is a problem on a spectrum. It may not be a clinical problem. Depression exists on a spectrum. Just a couple of months ago, I went to see my family in Chicago, and I came back and I got depressed, and I stayed depressed for a good couple of weeks. Because when I get into a social situation, I love it and I eat it up. That's my jam. That's where I'm feeling good. And then when I get out of that social situation, I go into withdrawal and I get a little bit depressed. Sometimes that lasts for a day, sometimes that lasts for a week. Doesn't mean that I need to get on medication in my depression because I felt depressed. But it wasn't a clinical depression. So I'm going to talk about depression, we're going to talk about anxiety, and we talk about these things. There may be something inside of you that resonates with what we're saying. You say, oh yeah, I've got that too. You know what, I'm clinically depressed. I could use this to my advantage. No, yeah, sorry, you don't get to do that. Also, you may be clinically depressed and just never knew it. And so if that's you, come talk to me. I've got availability. We can do something about that. That's my jam. That's why I'm here. So, a little bit about the way depression works. Think of depression as this little goblin that camps out in your brain and lives off of your motivation, just eats your motivation like popcorn. And so you don't have any motivation because the depression is consuming it all. And so you're depressed, which means that you have no motivation, which means you do nothing. Why do you do nothing? Because you don't have motivation to do anything. What happens when you do nothing? It makes you depressed, which consumes your motivation. So you do nothing, which makes you depressed, which consumes your motivation. So you do nothing. So that's a little bit about the way depression works. I am going to get into a biblical story of depression, and then I'll wind up by talking about what to do about depression. One of my favorite stories of depression is the story of Elijah in 1 Kings 18 and 19, when he goes to Mount Carmel and has that face-off with the prophets of Baal and calls down fire from heaven. Like, how awesome is that, right? So I'm going to run through this story. I'm not going to read it from the Bible. I'm going to give you Stephen Black's interpretation of the Bible. So Bible teachers, forgive me. You can talk to your students about this stuff later, but you just bear with me. I'm going to run through this. So Elijah goes up onto Mount Carmel, right? And the prophets of Baal are like, we got this. We can do whatever we want. Baal's going to rock this show. And nothing happens. And then Elijah gets up and he's like, all right, let's make this interesting. Not only am I going to call down fire from heaven, it's going to be obvious. I'm going to make this difficult for me. And so he covers this cow with water, and he's like, God, would you mind? And God sends fire down from heaven, consumes this thing. He's like, see, told you. By the way, let's kill all these prophets of Baal. Let's kill them all. And so they kill them all. And then Ahab, King Ahab, who's there watching this whole thing, he's like, oh, crap. Oh, this is bad. Oh, I gotta go tell my wife, because he was whipped. So he goes, he gets in his chariot and goes to Jezebel. And this is just the state of mind that Elijah was in this moment. Elijah tucks up his robes and he's like, I'm gonna beat you there, I can run. And so he books it on foot and beats Ahab to where Jezebel is. That's just where his I think Ahab probably felt like I feel right now, but more so I'm just amped. I'm I get to talk, I get to speak in front of people, and they're all watching me. I think Elijah probably felt more of that. The dude was on this huge adrenaline rush, and so he books it on foot, beats Ahab to where Jezebel is. Jezebel hears this news, and she's like, oh, I'm gonna kill you, boy. I'm gonna kill you so dead. God help me if by this time tomorrow, I do not kill you so dead like you killed those prophets of mine. And he's like, oh, crap. And so he runs away. Elijah runs away, which is interesting. Why would you run away? Does he not know who God is? He had a front row seat. He was standing close enough to this fire from heaven that he could have roasted marshmallows. And yet when someone says, I don't like you, I'm going to kill you, he runs away. So he runs away. He goes and camps out under this tree, and he falls asleep. Angel wakes him up, gives him food, and says, hey, eat this. And he eats the food, he goes back to sleep. Angel wakes him up, gives him some food, and says, eat this food. He eats the food, he goes, what is the second time? Second time he eats the food, Angel says, go to Mount Horeb. I think that's right. Goes to Mount Horeb, and he camps out in his cave. He goes to sleep. He wakes up, God talks to him, and he complains to God. And he says, dude, do you not know what's happening? All the prophets are being killed. I'm the only one left. This sucks. And I want to die. That to me sounds like depression. Coming to a point where you're like, I can't do this anymore. I'm empty. I'm all alone. I just want to die. That sounds a lot like depression. Now, the Bible doesn't call this depression. It doesn't say that specifically. One of the reasons that I think it's depression is the way that God treated Elijah. First, he gave him some time to take a couple of naps, a couple of big naps. He fed him. He told him to go to Mount Horeb, which was a 40-day and night walk. So he gave him some physical activity to do. So he gave him sleep, food, water, activity. And then after Elijah is done complaining to God, God says, I'm going to give you a helper. I'm going to give you a wingman, a sub superhero, he's your assistant. Go meet up with Elisha. And so he gives him people. He gives him his people. Dude, we need people. We need our people. I cannot tell you how many times I deal with depression. I see depression come into my office as a counselor, and I'm like, what's going on in your life? And Video games. Like, nothing wrong with video games. Play your video games. I play video games. Video games are awesome. What's going on? Like video games? Like how much video games? Like 8 to 12 hours a day. What? How are you feeling? Pretty depressed. Really? Why? Are you hanging out with people? Yeah, well, I play video games. No, you're not. No, you're not. You're hearing voices in your head, but when you're in the room with someone, when you're looking them in the eyes, your brain releases chemistry that's good for you. You get serotonin, oxytocin, you get a lot of chemistry that's good for you when you're hanging out with people. Talking to people while you're playing video games doesn't count. That's not people. We are made to be in community. We need people. Do you remember when God created the world and he looked at his creation and he said it's not good? Do you remember that? When he made Adam and he said, it is not good that man should be alone. I don't think we're made to be alone. I think we need people. And that's one of the things that God used to help Elijah out. Also, I want to circle back around to depression is not a sin. No way was Elijah sinning. He was doing the work of God. In fact, God confirmed that by sending literal fire from literal heaven to help him out. He was doing the work of God, and it led to depression. Why? Maybe because it emptied him. Maybe because he gave it all he had. He gave it 110%. And maybe he was like me and just went on this emotional high and then went on this crazy race to Jezebel, and then maybe he crashed. I don't know. But he wasn't sinning. It wasn't necessarily bad choices that he was making. It wasn't just his brain chemistry that was off. There were circumstances going on that led to this. So, what do you need to treat depression? God help me. I'm going to tell you what to do about your depression. Number one, assess your circumstances and assess yourself. What's going on outside of you and inside of you right now? Are you hanging out with people? Do you have your people? Do you have the resources that you need? Do you have the time and the space in life to take care of yourself? Do you have margin? Do you have downtime? When you're looking at what's going on inside of yourself, I would ask, how is life working for you? Are you able to show up to school and be present? Are you able to show up to relationships? Are you able to show up to family time? Are you able to show up to different things and get stuff done? Or can you not? Maybe you're struggling in home. Maybe home is a difficult place for you. I'm sure it is for some of you at least. I understand that. But if home is a difficult place for you, can you still be present in other places? Can you still be present and show up and get stuff done at school, in sports, whatever it is that you've got going on? How is life working for you? Next question, how are you feeling? Honestly, how do you feel and how does it go when you're alone, if you're alone? Can you spend time with your own thoughts in silence? How are you doing and how are you feeling when you're with other people? Does that feed you when you're with your people? Not just people, not just at the mall, whatever, not just in this sanctuary where you're surrounded by all these people, some of whom you might not know or like. When you're with your people, how is that for you? Do you have your people? How do you feel about that? Assess what's going on inside of yourself. So, after assessing your circumstances and yourself, meet your own needs. Sleep, food, activity, people, these are all vital parts of just maintaining mental health. I'm not saying that's all. I'm not saying you don't have some difficult past circumstances, maybe a difficult family life, maybe difficult relationships that are contributing to you having a hard time. But these are important parts of taking care of yourself so that you can be at your best, so you can experience the fullness of life that God has for you. Meet your needs, talk about your feelings. For the love of all that is holy, talk about your feelings. It's okay to have feelings. There are no good and bad feelings. Feelings are just information. They're just tools. If you're sad, if you're lonely, talk about your sadness. Talk about your loneliness. Name it. One of the most effective ways to turn the volume down on difficult feelings is to talk about them, especially with safe people. One of the things you can do in talking about your feelings, we don't want to trauma dump, right? When someone says, hey, how's it going? And you're like, well, let me tell you about the time that my dog died. It's like, whoa. I said, how's it going? Isn't hi, but I didn't want to know, One of the things that you can do when you're talking about your feelings is say, you know, I'm having a hard time, can I tell you about it? And when they say, yeah, sure, I've got a couple minutes, I can listen, okay, now you have permission to share a little bit. One of the things that you can do to talk about your feelings is just name them simply. I'm going to give you a very simple formula that I use as a licensed mental health therapist in my office all the time. The formula goes like this: I feel blank. Or you can talk about other people's feelings, and it goes like this. Hold on. You feel blank. You feel sad. It's crazy how well that works when you use it consistently. You can also take it one step further and say, I feel blank because blank. I feel sad because my dog died. I feel anxious because I've got a school assignment coming up. I feel sad because, actually, for no good reason, I just feel sad today because it's a Tuesday morning and I'm feeling down. I feel sad because I feel sad in the mornings. Mornings are just hard for me. That's okay too. You just name your feelings. You don't have to justify it. You don't have to explain it. You can just name it. Then finally, as you're talking about your feelings, do something. Remember when I said anxiety takes away your motivation? Or sorry, depression. I'm sorry about that. Anxiety's yours. Depression takes away your motivation, which leads to doing nothing, which leads to depression. You want to break that cycle? Do something. But Stephen, I'm depressed. I don't have motivation. I know. Again, one of those other super simple tools that I use as a therapist. It's called acting as if in psychological terms. In the common, you might say, fake it till you make it. What would you have done? What would you be doing if you were doing okay? I know that you're feeling down. I know that you're depressed. I know that you don't have motivation. What if you didn't? What if you were okay? What would you do? What would you have enjoyed doing? Do that. Just a little bit. Doesn't have to be crazy. You don't have to go from 0 to running 5Ks. Just do a little bit of something, anything. And eventually what will happen is, I'm depressed, but I'm doing something, which actually gives me a little motivation to do something, which makes me a little bit less depressed, which actually gives me more motivation to do more stuff. Eventually your life is going to build, and this momentum is going to build until you find out, you wake up one day and you find out, I'm doing a lot better than I was 3 months ago, just by making small adjustments. You can, when you get on an airplane, when you're flying an airplane, you can change your destination by changing your direction in very small increments, because over the long haul, it makes a big difference. So if you're doing nothing, just do a little bit of something. Do a little bit of something with gentleness for yourself and compassion for yourself. You can say to yourself, this is hard, and this hurts, and it doesn't feel natural. It doesn't feel natural to hang out with my friends and do these things that used to feel fun to me before I got depressed. It doesn't feel natural. And I still feel emptiness inside, but that's okay. I'm gonna keep doing little things until I start feeling better. I wanna finish by giving us all a moment to check in with ourselves and our feelings. This is a tool that you can use at home, at school, wherever you want. Don't look at the people next to you, because this is kind of weird. Psychotherapy stuff that I do, just think about, you look at me, or close your eyes if that makes you more comfortable. What I want us all to do, if you're comfortable doing it, is place one hand on your heart, one hand on your belly. Those are 2 places of need, right? We need to fill our hearts, we need to fill our bellies. In a moment, we're all gonna do this together. Don't do it yet, I'm gonna explain it first. We're gonna take a deep breath into our gut, and we're going to take a slow breath out. So you're going to take a breath in through your nose, you're going to take a slow breath out through your mouth. And as you breathe out, you're going to give yourself time to ask yourself, how do I feel and what do I need right now? That's why I have your hands on your places of need, your heart and your gut. How do I feel and what do I need right now? So let's go ahead and take a moment to do this, just in silence. I'm going to go ahead and pass things over to my associate, Bethy, who's going to come and talk about anxiety. Awesome, let's give Stephen a round.
to just take a moment to say, if anything from Stephen's talk or Bethy's talk is coming up, is drumming up some stuff. We're going to have all 5 of Fircrest's associates here after chapel, and then some teachers and students are going to come forward for prayer too. But we would love you guys to hang after. If you need to talk, we're going to make space for that. So just park your questions in a spot where you'll remember, but please come up and get help or ask questions. Cool. Everyone say hi, Bethy. Hi. Take it away.
Hi, my name is Bethy, and I feel anxious because I am standing in front of 400 people about to talk to you. How many of you get anxious when you have to talk in front of people? Yeah. Did you know that public speaking is the #1 fear in America? Death is number 2. That means more people would rather die than be where I am at right now. Guess how I feel about public speaking? I love it, because I have 400 of you looking at me. And I love attention. This is gonna be great. My name's Bethy. I grew up here in Vancouver, been to Bible school, was a teacher. I was a middle school teacher. Middle schoolers are over here, right? Hello, middle schoolers. I was a middle school teacher at a private school in Germany for missionary kids. Loved it. I am a licensed mental health therapist, and my specialty at Fircrest is actually called neurofeedback. I rewire brains. So you come visit me, I hook your head up to electrodes, I look at your brain waves, I get you to look at your brain waves in a way your brain understands, and your brain changes how it works. It's awesome. I love it. I do a lot with anxiety, and that's what I'm going to talk to you guys about, is anxiety. So I want to piggyback on a lot of what Stephen said. Emotions are not a sin. Emotions are information. Emotions are the way that our brain and our body communicate with our conscious mind to let us know what's going on. But the Bible says be anxious for nothing. The Bible says give all your anxieties to God. So how do we make sense of that? So I want to talk about that for a minute. Anxiety is a spectrum. We've got this spectrum, 0 to 100. 0 is no anxiety, 100 is I'm having a panic attack. And anxiety, okay, not many people realize this. Do you realize you need anxiety? What? I need anxiety? You need a certain amount of anxiety. You don't need up in the 80s, 90s, 100s. That's when you're stuck there. That's when we have diagnosable anxiety. You need anxiety lower. For example, I love to travel. I'm going to the airport next week. I get anxious. I get worried every time I go to the airport. Why? Am I going to get there on time? Is traffic going to mess me up? Am I going to get my bags checked, get through security, and get to the gate on time? Or is my plane going to leave without me? So my anxiety, my worry, which, on that scale of 0 to 100 is maybe like a 20. It motivates me. It motivates me to plan my schedule, to make sure I leave on time, to make sure that I'm giving myself that buffer to get through security, because I can't control how long the lines are going to be. I can't control traffic, but it gets me thinking about those things. It gets me making a plan, and then once I've got my plan in place, I've decided what time I'm leaving, I've decided what that buffer looks like, I go, okay, God, I am going to give you my worry. I am going to trust you that you're going to take care of traffic because I can't. I'm going to trust you that you're going to take care of the lines at the airport because I can't. I'm going to trust you that you're going to take care of all the details that I didn't think about. Now, maybe you don't travel often, so what could this look like for you? Say you've got a big project or a big test coming up. Now, if you just give all your worries to God, I'm not going to worry about my test. Is that really helpful? Well, yeah, God's going to take care of everything. However, you're now not taking your responsibility for the things that God has given you responsibility over. Your time management, your schooling. You are responsible for your schooling. So you make a plan, you study, you do your homework, you do those things, and then you trust God for the things that you can't control. There are things that we can't control as we get to school. Maybe we were running late that morning because our alarm didn't go off. The power went out and, my phone died and my alarm didn't go off. And now I'm feeling all flustered. Instead of worrying about that before it happens, we're going to trust God with that, because those are the things that are outside of our planning. So this is normal anxiety. I would classify it as worry. It's just daily things. But here's the thing. With our normal anxiety, once the situation is over, it goes away. And that's how we know it's normal anxiety. It's normal stuff that we just need because it motivates us to move forward, and once it's over, it goes away. But sometimes anxiety doesn't. And what do we do when it doesn't go away? That's when we've got a problem. That's when we're looking at the clinical anxiety that we at Fircrest deal with, that other counseling centers deal with, is when your brain gets stuck. Because there are times it gets stuck up in that 80, 90, 100 end of the spectrum. And that's when we've got a problem. So I want to define what that looks like so you get a difference, because we all do this. When I was in school for counseling, our teachers warned us, hey, as we go through the DSM, it's our big book of all the different mental health issues, they're like, you're gonna have fun diagnosing yourself with every single one that comes along. Because this is what our brains do. We go, oh my gosh, I'm reading about this and I felt anxious before, so I must have anxiety. So let's talk about this. Anxiety is excessive. It permeates all areas of your life, or multiple areas of your life. It's not just, oh, I've got a test coming up and I'm feeling really anxious about it, my test is over, oh, it went away. No, it sticks around. It happens more days than not. So if it's more days than not, so if there's 7 days in a week, how many is more days than not? 4. So if 4 days a week you're feeling these anxiety symptoms, but if it just comes and goes based on situation and you can pinpoint the situation, that's just your normal everyday stuff, and we need it because it's going to motivate us to make plans, make changes. It's across activities. So somebody with anxiety, they're not just going to feel it when the test is coming, or when they're heading to the airport, or at night when they're walking through a dark parking lot. By the way, that anxiety is good. That's going to protect you. It's going to make you aware of what's going on. But when you're feeling it all the time, when you're feeling it at home, when you're sitting around doing nothing and you're just feeling really anxious and really worried and there's nothing that you're worried about, and why are you worried? What do you have to worry about? But your body is just worried and your brain is just anxious and it's just racing. And we've got a problem. Check my notes. It can make you feel on edge, agitated, irritable. Now, I am not saying that every time one of your friends is irritable, they are feeling anxious or they have anxiety. There are lots of other things that make us feel irritable: lack of sleep, lack of food, all those things that Stephen was talking about. We need those things. But if you find you're getting irritable for no reason, you've had good sleep, you've eaten, and you're just irritable all the time, maybe. Also, it could be hormones. You're teenagers. Your hormones are constantly doing weird things because your bodies are changing, your brains are growing. So give yourself some grace. It can also make a person feel tired and fatigued. Anxiety is exhausting. And so it can make you feel tired or fatigued. You want to sleep all the time. It's hard to concentrate. It can make your mind just go blank. On the opposite side, there are some people who, when they're anxious, they go into hyper mode where they've got to get everything done and just got to control everything and do everything because it's a way of controlling their anxiety. It can cause muscle tension, and that can lead to all sorts of aches and pains. Just wait till you hit 40. But it's not productive. These things are not productive. These are your brain being stuck in anxiety. And there's a couple ways your brains can get stuck in anxiety. One is trauma. When a person encounters trauma, their brain goes into that high anxiety to protect themselves, to keep themselves safe. You go into fight or flight so that it's your brain amping up to protect itself. So it's aware of the situation, it can plan, it can run away, it can protect itself. Your brain needs to do that, you know? How many of you are driving yet? Sorry, middle schoolers. How many of you are driving yet? Okay, how many of you have been driving down the road and, I had this happen to me just last week. I'm driving down the road through my neighborhood and a cat comes running out. And I get that jolt of like, because I don't want to hit the kitty, I like kitties. So I get that jolt of, well, my body just had this jolt of adrenaline, which is the fight or flight reaction, because it's heightening my reaction so that I can react to the situation, not hit the kitty. It can also happen, another driver pulls out in front of me, a kid runs across the street playing in my neighborhood. It can happen in many, many other situations. But my body goes into this fight or flight reaction. I get this jolt of adrenaline. I'm prepared to react. And then once the situation passes, my body goes, okay, thanks for that. Thank you, anxiety. Thank you for warning me that I needed to take some action. Now I get to move on. But some brains go, oh, that was helpful. I gotta stay there. And especially trauma will do that. Trauma will say to the brain, you need to stay there. Even though the threat is gone, my anxiety kept me safe, so I need to hold on to my anxiety. I need to stay there. No, you don't. But how do you get your brain to understand that? The brain thought it was helpful, and so it gets stuck there. So trauma can happen. Genetics. Some brains are just more prone to anxiety. Medications or substances can cause anxiety. So, we think that those things can help, but sometimes that's a side effect of them. Medical conditions, or just having your brain chemistry wrong. Stephen was talking about that. With depression, sometimes that brain chemistry can be off and the medication can help. Same with anxiety. Just helps the brain to not be kicking out those anxious chemicals that we don't need. There's lots of things you can do to help. We at Fircrest, we help people every day with anxiety. There's lots of coping skills we can teach, medication, neurofeedback, all the things that Stephen was talking about. Sleep, people, food, all those things, activity are really awesome. I actually worked with a doctor who would not prescribe any mental health medication to somebody until they got vitamin D in their system. We live in a place that is gray and rainy, and vitamin D is a huge help for us. But I want to talk about coping skills for a minute. I want to give you a coping skill that is great for anxiety. So Stephen had you breathing. That is a great one. That is a great one for anxiety as well. Breathing way deep. We call it breathing from your diaphragm. When you're breathing and making your belly go in and out, not your chest. When we breathe from our chest, we're breathing really shallow. We tend to be breathing faster, and that actually makes us more anxious. When we breathe deep from our belly and not from our chest, we're breathing slower, we are filling up our whole lungs, and it helps with anxiety as well. But that's not the one I want to teach you. How many of you can count backwards from 5 to 1? I see some hands not up. Oh, I'm a little worried. Okay, we can count backwards. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. How many of you can name your 5 senses? Okay, your 5 senses. Can somebody name them for me? Somebody be brave. Name them for me. Oh, I see a hand over there. Yeah, not you. Yeah, okay. Hearing, sight, smell, taste, touch. Our 5 basic senses. If you can count backwards from 5 and you know your 5 senses, you can do this, okay? So, when a person is feeling anxious, they often feel disconnected from their body and disconnected from the world around them. So this is a grounding activity, and a grounding activity is something that helps you connect to the here and now and connect to your body. So, you start with 5. 5 things that you can see. So when you're feeling anxious, 5 things that you can see. So I would stop right now and I would look around. I can name 5 things that I can see. I can see a speaker, I can see a person, I can see an exit sign, I can see, words have disappeared from my brain. A screen, I can see the lights. 5 things that you can see. Then, what are 4 things that I can touch? I'm touching this microphone right now. I can touch the table. I can feel my feet touching my flip-flops. And I can touch my hair. Okay, 4 things that you can touch. And then 3 things that you can hear. I can hear the sound of my own voice. It sounds kind of echoey. I can hear just the moving of the crowd. There's always just a little bit of noise from the crowd. And I just heard some rattling or something over there, okay? It doesn't matter what, but just 3 things you can hear. 2 things you can smell. Now, smell and taste get a little harder, which is why we tend to put them on the lower end of things. So 2 things that I can smell, well, I wear a nice smelly deodorant. It's pumpkin spice. Yes, I am that person. It smells nice. Ooh. Okay, I'm being a bit ridiculous, but find 2 things that you can smell. I have a friend who has very high anxiety, and for a while she would carry around gum. She would carry around like 3 different packs of gum, all flavored. because she could smell them. Okay? And then the last thing is taste. Another thing that reason she would carry around the gum is she could pop one in and she could taste it. Okay? Now, oh my goodness, what if I don't remember what order to do the things in? Can you count backwards from 5? Can you remember your 5 senses? It doesn't matter which sense you put with which number. Get a pack of Skittles. Do 5 for Skittles. Take a minute. Taste the first one. Taste the red. Yummy. Taste the green. Oh, they changed it. I don't like that flavor anymore. Taste the grape. Oh, that one's my favorite. You know, it's okay to do 5 things you can taste, 4 things you can hear. Put on some headphones, listen to the music, and identify 4 sounds that you can hear in there. It doesn't matter which number goes with which sense. What matters is that you're slowing down, you're focusing on your body, you're focusing on what you're experiencing at that moment in the present, rather than getting stuck in your anxiety, which is often future related, about all the worries of all the things that could happen. Okay? So that's a little activity, just 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Go through what you can see, smell, taste, feel, and hear. Another great one that Stephen said is the deep breathing. Just hand on the heart, hand on the belly, taking 10 slow, deep breaths is another great one. That is the end of my spiel. I do want to bring up my whole team so you can meet them all. So come on up. Come on up. Come on. I didn't warn them too much that I was going to do this. So here we have Ainsley. Ainsley is our main therapist. He owns the clinic, so he's the boss man. And then Sarah is our play therapist. She works mostly with kids, but she's phenomenal. And then you met Stephen. And then I always pronounce your name wrong. I have only recently met our newest member, Shania. I always pronounce your name wrong. I'm so sorry. Just embarrassed myself in front of everybody. But Shania. And Shania is the newest member of our team who I usually am not in the office at the same time, so I haven't had a lot of chances to interact with her. So we're going to stick around after for a little bit. I think